Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition.
All right, so last week for you all, or 2
Mhm.
minutes ago for us, we left off after Erik and Lyle Menendez had been arrested for the murders of their parents, and now we are picking back up with the trial. I will make a second content warning. Same content, still child abuse, child sexual abuse, and themes of suicide. All right. So, people who sided with the prosecution or the prosecution themselves often focus on this idea that the brothers' claims of abuse never came up until the defense team became a part of the picture, insinuating that this was nothing more than a strategy that the defense had convinced them to run with. However, throughout the first trials, this will seem to prove untrue. When the indictments were first brought before a grand jury, they added charges of conspiracy, but declined to include the prosecution's proposed special circumstance of murder for financial gain. Did not feel there was enough for that. The trials began in 1993. They decided that each boy would have their own jury, so in essence, 2 trials.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to stay in the courtroom for each other's opening statements. Some evidence, though, would be specific to each brother. The prosecutor, Pam Bazanich, described the boys as 2 great actors, while they tried to argue that the murders were all about money. The defense countered that they always had access to their parents' money. They really weren't in need of anything further. In fact, they state that the boys did not know about the large inheritance that would be awaiting them because they were told that they had been cut out of the will. Now, that depends on, as we talked about last week, if they had the will erased. But yeah, good for the defense.
It's like someone goes on The Bachelor and they're like, I'm not going on here to become the Bachelor, but if I become the Bachelor, okay. Like we're doing this because we want to stop the abuse. But if we're also beneficiaries of a life insurance policy and we get $1 million, okay.
Or they're even like, I don't know if he took us out of his will, but just in case, just erase whatever's on there.
Yeah.
I don't know what it says.
We've been through some shit. I think it's
I've
the least we
earned
deserve
their fucking money.
Yeah.
Some people still did not like Erik and Lyle or their temperament. One photo from the first time that Lyle walked into the courtroom still floats around of him smiling to his lawyer as she attempted to crack a joke to him. People hated this.
Weren't they fucking though?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I don't know. I did not find that.
I love.
Was Lyle Menendez fucking Jill Lansing? The prosecution's star witness would be Dr. Oziel, while the defense would focus on testimony by the brothers' family and friends. Lyle and Erik did testify, and Lyle told the jury that he was molested by his father from age 6 to age 8. He said that he did ask his dad to stop, but his dad always had an explanation that it meant that he loved him, that this was just how he showed love, that they were bonding. This is what fathers did with their sons. Even at times, connecting these two things that soldiers and warriors would engage in to prepare for battle. And I think that was part of it, that it started as these massages to make them better at tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was performance based in a way. Mm-hmm. And then clearly did not remain that way. Did you find anything?
Yes. I don't know what I was thinking of. I think I must be thinking of a different case. However, I did learn something kind of cute, that Erik is now best friends, or became, probably not anymore, became best friends with a 90-year-old juror named Betty.
Cute. Yeah, you were probably thinking of Casey Anthony and Jose Baez.
Yes. Probably.
They shared photos that Jose had taken of the boys nude, which seemed to focus on their genitals. Like, parents have pictures of their children nude, right? Like, I'm not going to pretend that that's the problem. But Lyle also testified that he would be shown and forced to watch pornographic videos with his father, some that were especially violent. One common sign of childhood abuse is wetting the bed, sometimes into older ages, which Lyle says that he did well into his teenage years. As punishment for this, his father would beat him and call him a sissy, while his mother would rub his face in the urine-soaked sheets and refuse to change them.
He's not a puppy.
Yeah, that's like not how that works. Just like learn your lesson by smelling it. They also focused their questions on their relationship with their mother, as they would need to establish a why for both murders, right? Like, we can't just say like Jose was abusive, because then like what you just like then you could still be
collateral damage. Yeah.
Right. Until Lyle was 11, he remembers his brother. That would be less weird. Until Lyle was 11, he remembers his mother going topless in front of him, and by 13, she was still bathing him. He says that she would invite him into her bed, asking him to fondle her, which I don't know, like, if it was, like, made to feel like just, like, cuddling, like, a way to, like, you know what I mean? Because, like, they don't really, like, say, like, we were sexually abused by our mother, but that would be that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it just felt a little less that way. I don't know. They had bad arguments when he started. What?
A squirrel jumped. No, a squirrel jumped on the windowsill so fast. It scared me.
They had bad arguments when he started declining to sleep with her. He recalls the time that his mother cut herself, then blamed him, wiped her blood on his face, and would not allow him to wipe it off.
Ew.
So, like, the emotional abuse here runs deep with Kitty. Yeah. Unreal. In Erik's testimony, he described a certain time period that he calls the dark days. During this time, the sexual abuse was more torturous than before. Erik classified the types of abuse by his dad into categories, and I will just name the categories and you can use your imagination. He called these knees, nice sex, rough sex, and sex. He describes times that his father would stab him with pins and needles, like tacks. Jose would frequently call Erik the F slur and say other things to ridicule gay people, but would always insist to Erik that doing this with his son did not make him gay. Not the concern here, Jose.
Yeah.
No homo.
Nobody asked.
Yeah. One of the more shocking moments of the testimonies was when Erik admitted that the first time he was sexually abused, it was actually by Lyle. Lyle was abused by his dad initially in what he would later describe as object sessions, and then he did the same with Erik. At the time, he viewed this as playing with his brother by modeling what his father had described to him as a way of bonding. Which is just, like, horrific.
Yeah.
And, like, also makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
One of the things that the prosecution wanted the jury to be aware of was that prior to his parents' murders, Erik and his friend Craig had written a screenplay titled Friends, in which the main character kills his two parents and inherits hundreds of millions of dollars. That character then goes on to commit more murders and some kidnappings. Seems a little bit different. They also questioned Erik on how it was that he was so scared shooting his parents and then, quote, freaking out, but was also able to reload his gun and be so accurate in his shooting. Which I think is like a fair thing as prosecution to bring up,
Yeah.
but also like people can be good shots when
Yeah.
they're nervous. The boy's cousin Diane told of the happenings while she used to live with the Menendez family in the summers. She said that Kitty would fly into rages where she would scream and throw things at the children. She describes that the family was strange sexually, saying that Jose would spend a lot of time with the boys upstairs. One time she recalls Lyle, who was 8 at the time, came downstairs and asked to touch Diane down there, telling her that that's what he and his father were doing upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, it's so sad. Like, it like is so, like, you don't always have like those red flags, but
Mm-hmm.
like kids don't know to keep everything a secret until they
Mm-hmm.
do, you know? And like
Yeah.
we see this all the time where people will go to their friends and like Gracie Solomon and say, is this normal? Like, is your dad
Yeah.
doing this to you? And like, if like, I just feel like a lot of the times, like if people just pay attention,
Mm-hmm.
like kids will tell you a little bit.
Yeah.
When the brothers were between 11 and 14 years old, Diane remembers them having arguments about who would sleep with their mother that night, and that Kitty would shower with both of the boys at this age. Rough. And like interesting that like even like media and like reports of this have still not called anything Kitty did to them sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Like I find that strange. Their cousin Andy said that Erik had confided in him that his dad gave him massages in his genital area, asking him if it was normal. Now, Andy did not have a father figure in his life, and so he was like, I don't know, dude. Like, it doesn't
It's
really
the wrong
sound
person.
normal, but like, I don't know. And this admission to Andy was when he was young. So just keep that in mind. It was before going on trial for murder.
He was a child.
Yeah. Another cousin, Al, gave a horrifying detail. So prepare yourselves. When he recalled the time that he found a Tupperware container full of feces underneath Lyle's bed. When he asked Lyle why it was there, Lyle told him that he was too scared to leave his room if he didn't have to because he didn't want to run into his father. Yeah. Jose's sister, Marta, also testified that she knew of neglect and abuse of her nephews by Jose and Kitty, although she admittedly let this information out of her initial police interviews because the boys were no longer in danger, and she hoped to preserve the family name and image in any way that she still could. She literally was like, I knew that, like, what was most important to my brother was that no one ever knew this, and, like, you know, the boys weren't really in danger anymore. So like I just thought like the one thing I could do in his memory is like not tell people that.
They also like didn't do anything when they were in danger.
Yeah. It's like sure, like I get that they had like solved it, but also like yeah, they maybe wouldn't have had to do what they did. You know? She also described that Jose had been sexually abused by their mother when he was a young boy. Many, including some of these family members, but also people who worked with Jose Menendez, described him as frightening and not very likable. A lot of people were not shocked by his death because of how they knew him. Like when they heard that this man had been nearly decapitated by shotgun shots, they said, yeah, I'm not shocked that someone could hate him that much. One witness that was originally thought to be helpful for the defense ended up going a little bit differently. Donovan Goudreau, whose ID the boys had used to purchase their shotguns, got on the stand. First, he admitted that he did not give Lyle permission to buy a shotgun using his ID, but that they did use each other's IDs often. So he's like, really? I didn't give him permission, but like, who can blame him for thinking that I'd be fine with it? Because we did it all the time. Not to buy murder weapons, though, Donovan. It's a little different. Between 1990 and 1991, he had told Robert Rand, the investigative journalist and author, that one of the brothers had confided in him about their abuse. I believe it's probably Lyle, since they were friends. But Goudreau had shared with likely Lyle that he was sexually abused as a child, and Lyle shared his similar experiences. In fact, Goudreau told Rand specific details that matched with things that Erik had shared as well. He was able to describe a certain bathtub in the Menendez home where abuse had frequently occurred. But when asked on the stand, Goudreau shocked the courtroom, saying that he did share his own experiences of abuse with the brothers, but neither of them ever shared similar experiences with him. He declines having ever told anyone to the contrary. Because of this, the defense would have to subpoena Robert Rand's tapes. Because he's a journalist, he recorded you.
Yeah, you ding dong.
The tapes were released on the news and then were admitted into court. Clearly, Goudreau had given Rand many details about what the Menendez brothers had told him. I don't know, man, like how you don't got a perjury charge.
Yeah.
Like, I think the way he got out of it is then when they talked to him about this, he was like, I don't remember it that way, but clearly it's true. But like, I don't remember that. Dude, why? Another one of the boys' closest friends seemed to be helpful for the prosecution. Erik's best friend, Craig, the little screenplay writer, testified that Lyle had a man come to their home to erase the family will from the computer. He claimed to have been there while the computer expert was there, but was unable to describe him. However, he had not mentioned this in his November police interview. In fact, he admits that his recollection changed after reading the police records, which indicated what day the computer expert had been to the house. So then he was like, oh, right. So I remember that he was there on that day too. He also claims that Erik had admitted to him that he had murdered his parents, but at the time, Erik did not mention self-defense or abuse. So he's like, he told me he killed him, and don't you think he would have mentioned if that's why? He initially said that Erik admitted this to him a week and a half after the murders, but will later say that Erik didn't confess to him until October, 2 months later. I don't know the significance of that, but boy, get your shit straight.
Yeah.
So now, the prosecution's star witness would be called. And this was a pretty contested choice. I think you might have some thoughts here. First, it was unclear whether records from therapy could be included, but since the doctor claimed to be afraid for his safety, the records did end up being released and were ruled admissible. Also, by this time, Judalon Smith and other women had alleged abuse by Dr. Oziel. Her claims include that Dr. Oziel would hypnotize her and control her mind. See, Judalon, you lost me a little. But again, there's other women, so like maybe, this is more real than we thought.
Do you think she means like literally, or like that he was like in some way controlling her? Okay.
No, she means literally. There was a word that like, you know how like how it works, like there's a word that like triggers you. I don't remember what it was, but it was like some random like word, and I had it in here, but then I was like, that's a detail I don't need.
What the fuck kind of name is Judalon?
I don't know.
That's
and
awful.
Smith with a Y. But yeah, so she like alleges there was this one word that would like make her hypnotized, and like, yeah. So yes, she does mean literally. In fact, just days before his testimony, the Sacramento Board of Psychology had charged him with multiple sexual assaults in which he gave women mood-altering drugs. Judalon Smith told the board that Dr. Oziel had often insisted that he be called Dr. Daddy.
Ew.
Yeah. Despite the questions surrounding him, the prosecution would bring him to testify anyway. They said, license taken away? charges against him, trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
We're still ready. Dr. Oziel's opinion was that the brothers killed their parents out of hatred, not out of self-defense. The main defense attorney, Leslie Abramson, aims to discredit the doctor, mentioning, which doesn't seem hard, I must say, mentioning that at the time he was having sessions with the Menendez brothers, Oziel's license was on probation. Dr. Oziel had also made many television appearances since the boys' arrests, seemingly benefiting from his role in the case. Oziel claims that in his practice, he only took notes during critical sessions, but he did not take notes during Erik or Lyle's sessions. When asked if he considered theirs to be critical sessions, he agreed that he did. He claims that he worried later that he and his family were in grave danger after Erik's confession and Lyle's alleged threat. But the defense wonders why then he went to stay with Judalon Smith at her house instead of at home with his wife and kids. He says that he worries they would find him there. So just no care in the world for his wife and kids being killed.
He said, I didn't want to be there.
I just didn't want them to find me.
I mean, he already clearly had no care for his wife and kids because he's sexually abusing women.
And bringing them into his home.
Yeah.
Like, I still am like, what did his wife think was happening?
Yeah.
Like, just that he cares about his patients so much that he just lacks good boundaries in his professional life. Which he does, clearly, but...
Yes, obviously.
In a different way.
He would not be wrong.
Dr. Oziel maintained that Judalon Smith had seduced him, insisted on sexual contact, and forced herself onto him. Insisted on sexual contact. What does that even mean? Any kind of sexual contact. He describes her as seductively aggressive. You lost me, buddy. If you ever had me, that's where you lost me. However, he does still maintain that she was not a patient of his. The defense provided documentation of a consultation that he had done with Judalon Smith, where he provided her with a diagnosis and signed off in an official capacity as a psychiatrist. Like, he didn't sign friend Jerome Oziel said. Psychiatrist Dr. Oziel. Now, again, I find these coming up parts confusing about Miss Smith and Dr. Oziel. But Dr. Oziel has disputed that anyone could hear other people's sessions from the waiting room. I'm really not sure how that's helpful to him because there is a recording. So it does seem that other options would be worse for him. The other options are I let her record or I had the recording device in the room.
Yeah.
So I'm confused.
I was gonna say you probably wouldn't want people to be able to hear other sessions from the waiting room in a therapist's office.
Uh-huh.
However,
in this case,
she has it, then you're just setting yourself up for failure.
You really just want to say, man, I should have gotten a noise machine.
Yeah. I should have put a white noise machine right outside the door.
They have regrets, but what can you do? It's already happened. So the tape, including the confession, or at least the aftermath of it. So like I said, Erik confessed while they were on a walk. So then this tape includes once Lyle had come in and they're talking about it. It is included in the trial. Although the prosecution considers this the smoking gun, you can also hear what many interpret as Dr. Oziel leading the boys' answers in certain directions. He essentially tells the boys why they killed their mother too, by explaining that they must have thought they were doing her a favor, because although they had courage, she did not. He says, You both knew you could get away. You were about to get away, Erik, and Lyle, you were already away. but the pain of knowing that your mother was going to be left behind and victimized. Erik tried to interject, but the doctor continued. You saw her totally deteriorating. Your mother had no courage with your dad. Erik again says, well, but Dr. Oziel changes the subject. He was introducing his own theories regarding why they did what they did. However, nowhere at all in the tape did they discuss doing this for financial gain, getting money, or being inspired by a screenplay or Hollywood movies, as the prosecution alleges throughout the trial. There's also a tape in one of Dr. Oziel's 17 tapes in which he claims that he is not afraid of Erik and Lyle. Stupid. What a stupid man. It's like, don't you love when people like want to like preserve their pride so much that they just incriminate themselves? Like, you say, I was chicken shit. I was scared shitless. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think of anything else. I was so scared of these teenage boys. That's what you go with, my friend. Also, like, how scummy to just be like, you knew you could get away.
Yeah.
But your mom couldn't. Rude. The defense brought forth Dr. Oziel's appointment records, showing that he charged thousands of dollars for appointments that the boys did not attend. And this was proven because for many of the appointments, the boys were literally not in town. He claims to have done this in their best interest, so that it would look like they were attending therapy. In their closing arguments, the prosecution alleged that Erik was gay and that he had used details from his homosexual lifestyle to make up a story about his father abusing him. And I guess so did cousin Diane, Andy, Al, Aunt Marta, friends Donovan and Craig. They all live homosexual lifestyles.
Like
and that's where they
says.
Yeah.
Everybody's gay.
Yep. They were all just taking from their own experiences, as if like also you couldn't just like know what happens in gay sexual relationships.
Yeah. And I guess I didn't realize that like poking people with tacks was a part of
homosexual lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah, and that it can only be a part of a homosexual lifestyle.
Yeah. And also, like, could you imagine Jose is rolling over in his grave listening to these people describe anything he could have done with his sons as part of the homosexual lifestyle? Losing his marbles. The jury was... Yeah. Yeah. The jury was asked to consider either first-degree murder, second-degree murder, voluntary or involuntary manslaughter. The jury meetings, much like the rest of the trial, got very contentious. One juror even tacked up the photos of Jose and Kitty's bloodied bodies onto the bulletin board, wanting everyone to keep looking at the images. The foreman said, no, we can pass them around, but we're not going to force people to stare at them.
Yeah.
Gross. Like, also, yeah, we've seen them. Like, people have seen how horrific it is.
Yeah.
And, like, that's not really how this should go. Like, just deciding a case based on, like, how badly bodies were damaged.
Like, I don't think that that's the question. Like, they said that they did it. We know that they did.
It was brutal.
They shot them. Yeah. Like, we know how it happened. The question is whether it was self-defense or not.
Yeah. The juries were sent back to deliberate numerous times. They kept coming back and saying, we can't figure it out. And they were like, figure it out. So they really, really wanted them to make a decision. But eventually, Deciding they were hopelessly deadlocked, both were declared a mistrial due to the hung juries. While awaiting their second trial, something big was happening in the LA District Attorney's Office. They were dealing with the O.J. Simpson trial. In fact, while O.J. awaited trial, he shared a cell with Erik Menendez. They said that like Erik was like explaining to him like what prison is like and was like that OJ was used to having.
He's like 21 years old at this point. He's like,
yeah,
you're gonna be fine. It's really not that bad.
They said that OJ was like had like an orthopedic level pillow that he like now couldn't have because he's in prison. And Erik's like trying to talk to him about like how to find comfort and like all this stuff and like how to prepare for his trial, like because he had just gone through one. So now after OJ was acquitted, many believed that the LADA's office was really looking for a win. Their egos were bruised. So they headed into Erik and Lyle's second trial in 1995. This time, there was only one jury for both boys. Although it was the same judge presiding, there was a drastic change in what would be admitted. Any evidence of the abuse was no longer admissible unless it was directly connected to the boy's state of mind at the moment of the crime.
Which wouldn't it all be?
No. So none of the brothers' relatives could testify to their knowledge of the abuse for years. I guess, like, they're just saying, like, I think they were probably able to admit, like, within, like, the days leading up, like, we thought our parents were going to kill us on this fishing trip, and we thought they were going to, like, but basically the rest of it was, like, historical and, like, wasn't allowed in. Although Judalon Smith originally provided the prosecution with their star witness, Dr. Oziel, she would testify for the defense in the second trial that Dr. Oziel had manipulated the brothers into confessing. This time also, they had learned their lesson with the first one and O.J. Simpson. This trial would not be televised. The prosecution shifted strategies a little bit with the omission of what they coined the abuse excuse. They were now saying they didn't need to prove why Erik and Lyle killed their parents, only that they did, which they're right. Like, if there's not a defense allowed to say, like, this is why we did it, then all they have to do is say they did it. And the defense has to say, yeah, they did. A sort of scandal broke for the defense in the second trial. The prosecution began questioning Dr. Vickery, the defense psychiatrist, about his notes, and Leslie Abramson had many objections. However, once something is admitted in the notes, it is fair game to be discussed. Leslie said, okay, but it doesn't say that in his notes, so like we can't discuss that, leading the prosecution and the defense to compare their notes and realize that they were a little bit different. At this, Dr. Vickery has to tell the court the truth, that in the first trial, Leslie Abramson had asked him to remove parts of his notes. Some of these things included discussions of Lyle and Erik considering what their life would be like without their parents, like before. They just said, like, we had been thinking about it. Vickery says that he was told by Abramson to either remove these pieces or he would not be allowed to testify. The judge asked Leslie to come up and explain, but she pled the fifth. And she later said that actually she didn't need to plead the fifth because she wasn't required to share anything as that was attorney-client privilege. Whatever. She was then placed essentially under a gag order and took a back seat for the remainder of the trial, having the other defense attorneys take over. Now, she has said, like, yeah, I did ask him to, like, remove some things that either weren't relevant or were, like, personal information or whatever, but she was like, I just meant for him to like black it out. And he went and rewrote his whole notes. And like, I didn't tell him to do that. Which sounds good, right? But I don't know what the truth is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that really screwed him, I think. And all the other stuff. But in 1996, Erik and Lyle Menendez were both sentenced to life without parole for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit. Lyle Menendez has been married twice while in prison, once from 1996 to 2001, and then again to his current wife, Rebecca Sneed, in 2003. Erik Menendez married Tammy Sackerman in 1999 after meeting in 97, and their wedding cake was a Twinkie. Sweet. And they have been married the whole time, so. And yes, Lyle Menendez is fully bald, crystal ball of a head, and so precious, I must say, both of them. So, there have been some developments in the Menendez brothers' story since their sentencing in 1996. So, me, big Robert Rand fan, this man just kept on trucking, kept going, whatever. He was not stopping. He continued to investigate not only within the Menendez family, but into Jose Menendez's life in general. Erik and Lyle's aunt, Marta, says that she found Erik's application to Brown University in Jose's drawer, completed but never turned in. This motherfucker pulled a Cinderella story on his son, and he just hid that shit away. Rude. She realized at that moment that Jose was never going to let Erik move away from home for college. In fact, she remembers a time that her brother told her that Erik got accepted to UCLA last minute and said that he had given a large donation to the school and had circumvented the freshman requirement to live on campus by paying for the dorm anyway, but working out an agreement with the school, citing that Erik was struggling with dyslexia and needed Jose's help with his schoolwork. So this man paid to get him admitted, paid for his dorm, but was like, he will be staying at home with me. Like,
UCLA doesn't have disability services or tutors.
Yeah. Someone who's like
hours.
Definitely more qualified than you.
Right.
Buddy. But I'm guessing it was a very large amount of money.
Probably. $100,000.
Yeah.
For you? $100,000 for you?
Yeah. Taylor Swift. In 2018, Marta found a letter from Erik to her son, Andy, who at this time had passed away. Andy had testified about Erik's massages in the trial. This letter was written in December of 1988, about 9 months before the murders. And it said, quote, "Mom isn't doing too good. She's here physically, but mentally she's gone. I don't know why she puts up with Dad's shit. Sometimes I just wish I could talk to her. The way she worships him and tells him everything, I'm so afraid she'll tell him everything I say. I just can't risk it. I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy. But it's worse for me now. He's so overweight that I can't stand to see him. I don't know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking that he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. I'm afraid. He's crazy. He's warned me so many times about telling anyone, especially Lyle. I think if I do well enough in tennis, Mom and Dad will let up a little." End quote. So, interesting piece of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Rand spoke to Jose's personal assistant, John Peduto, who said multiple times how obsessed Jose was with the band Menudo, a boy band that he had signed to RCA Records. And John wasn't saying this to mean anything. He just was like, oh man, he's obsessed with them. And Robert Rand was like, see, you've said that like 40 times now.
It's weird.
should I look into this? And he did. Jose had signed this Puerto Rican band and was working to cross them over to the American market. So the way that Menudo worked is a little bit different. And as soon as I tell you, the red flags will be everywhere. Essentially, the band members rotated and new members were always being trained in. There was an age limit to Menudo in an effort to keep the music young. The manager, Edgardo Diaz, usually signed new members as young as 12, and then they aged out at 16. These boys would spend weeks at a time at the Menudo mansion in San Juan with a bunch of other boys and their manager, Edgardo Diaz. There were always a lot of rumors that Edgardo Diaz was a pedophile, but he was also incredibly powerful in Puerto Rico. It's giving like R. Kelly, Playboy Mansion, Epstein Island, like it's creepy. One former Menudo member, Roy Rossello, came forward in recent years to talk about the abuse that he suffered from Diaz. He claims that Diaz raped him and then continuously abused him for years, grooming him. He said that, like, I think, like, this was probably true all the time, that a boy was always chosen to, like, stay in Diaz's hotel room with him, and it was Roy for many years. And another guy said in the series that, like, everyone knew that they were, like, in a relationship, but no one really thought, like, that's abuse. And this one guy was like, okay, so we're just like, okay that they're in a relationship, like this kid's 14.
Yeah.
So Roy also met Jose Menendez and both of the Menendez brothers during the time that he was in the US performing with Menudo. Erik does remember meeting Roy once, but doesn't remember many details. And Erik also recalls how excited his father used to get when he got to be involved in choosing new Menudo members. At the age of 14, Roy says that he met Jose Menendez in a limo in New York and then went to Jose's home in New Jersey, where he alleges that he was drugged and sexually abused. It wasn't until 30-something years later that Roy realized his testimony could be helpful in the Menendez brothers' case. Both of these things, the letter to Andy found in 2018 and the confession, I guess, of Roy Rossello, are being used to try for an appeal for Erik and Lyle Menendez, as it corroborates their claims of years of abuse and refutes the idea from the prosecution that this was made up entirely as a defense strategy. And that is the end. Oh, yeah. Have you already seen the Menendez and Menudo series then?
No, when I was looking for pictures for the thumbnail, all of them, I guess, had been in recent articles, and all of them said, like, Menudo member. I was like, what the fuck is a Menudo member?
Yeah, I always thought Menudo was, like, someone's name, and I was like, when I saw the title on Peacock, Menendez and Menudo, I was like, oh, Menudo's just, like, another child abuser. It's like, whatever, but no. So yeah, I don't usually list them, but I had some interesting sources. The Menendez Murders by Robert Rand was great. Menendez and Menudo on Peacock is the series for that final information. And then there's an A&E series called like something, the Menendez Murder something, Erik Tells All, and it's good too. So.
Did you know that there is a docuseries on Peacock about, or maybe it's just a documentary on Peacock about the crimes of Jen Shaw?
Wow. I mean, it makes sense that it would be on Peacock, but.
I've heard it's really good. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. What did I see? Something's coming out today. Oh, just another Warren Jeffs thing is coming out later this week.
I want to say it's called like Shaw Scandal or
Shaw Amazing.
Shaw Not.
Nice. You really got her here.
Yeah.
Drag her.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thanks.
Yeah, Mary will bring us something less awful next week.
It has a
Maybe
happy
not.
ending.
Okay. Fine.
It's extremely graphic.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye.